This tutorial is a quick introduction to 3D in After Effects, 3D objects, and in particular the Cinema 4D application. So I'm just going to start with a new project, and in After Effects we'll, of course, before we do anything else, we'll save it into a new folder, my 3D, and call the project my 3D project. And in After Effects I will create a new composition. Let's make it, say, 30 seconds long. And that's all fine. Now, in my new composition, I'm going to create a layer, and it's a Maxon Cinema 4D layer. So when we create this kind of layer, it actually asks us to save an external file. The 3D file is an external Cinema 4D file. So I'm going to call it my shapes. And so now we have a new program opens, Cinema 4D. Just when you were thinking, oh, I'm starting to get my head around everything in After Effects, suddenly there's a whole other thing. So we can see here, it's a myshapes.c4d is the Cinema 4D layer. You can see there's some effects controls here for the Cinema 4D, and you can see in the project list we have our comp and a Cinema 4D shape. So let's have a look at some basics of what we see here. Cinema 4D is a 3D modeling program. Other 3D modeling programs include Maya and 3D Studio Max. Typically we see this perspective view, and if we were to create an object like a ball, for example, we are putting this ball is now at the origin, the 0, 0, 0, the center of this 3D world. And that's kind of what I want you to do to start with, is just create a shape. We can put a material on this shape, and down here under materials I'm going to load a preset material. Let's say maybe a glass, or let's say ice and snow, cracked ice. Lovely, what a beautiful material. So we can see it here, and we can drag it onto our ball, and the ball is now has this material of cracked ice. This is like a preview version. We can click here to see a rendered version of what it looks like when it's rendered. We can do some basic things with this object. We can move it around in space on the z-axis, the x-axis, and the y-axis. So if I now save this one with a file save, or just a Command S, and close my Cinema 4D Lite window, go back to After Effects, you can see that what we've created in Cinema 4D is now here in my layer. If I want to go back to edit it, I can simply click on the shape, the C4D, the ball, and hit Command E, and that will open it up again in my 4D program. if I wanted to animate it, I could, let's say, put a keyframe here with the little key symbol here, and on frame, let's say frame 30, I could move it and put another keyframe, so that will give me a basic movement in 3D. So next thing we'll do is add another shape. A cube or a cylinder or a cone is fine, capsule. I'm going to add a cone. Now notice it always puts a new shape into the center of the world, so I'll just move him to the side a bit, and I'll make another material. Oh, I have one here. I'm just going to load a material preset. There's so many different ones here. Let's try a pine wood. So if I drop a pine wood material onto here, and again I can just check in the render view what that actually looks like. It looks nice. Now when we're moving, when we want to look around a 3D world, we can hold down the Alt key and move the mouse around to look at the views. This is one area, one program where you really could benefit from having a 3-button mouse. If you have one lying around at home, this is a good thing to use. With the 3-button mouse, the left mouse button gives us this control. The middle mouse button lets us pan the camera around, and the right mouse button lets us zoom in and out. So yeah, if you have a 3-button mouse, this gives you some good control over viewing your 3D world. The other thing that's interesting here is this button here on the window. We actually have 4 views. One is the perspective view, and we can get back to the perspective view by just clicking this little enlarge button here. But for some fine controls and finding things, it's good to have these other views. This is a top, right side, and front view. And so just be aware that these views are here if we ever wanted to see them. Now the timing of in Cinema 4D, it has a separate timeline down here, and just be aware we have like the active space here. If we set it to 30 frames or 1 second, then it's going to yeah, it's showing us this 30 frames at the moment, which if we command save, if we go back to After Effects, then that's basically put those 30 frames, those 30 frames in here. Now we can make this longer. We can set the whole thing to be maybe 300 frames, like 10 seconds, and then let's say at if we then make the workspace more like 300 frames, and let's say at frame 90 we put a keyframe on our cone, and then at frame say 180 we put another keyframe back here, for example. So I'll save that, and then back in After Effects, we can stretch that out to the 8 seconds, and we can see our movements with the ball, and then a little while later our movement with the cone. You can see that that's not in real time, it's rendering that as we go. And this takes a lot of processing power to render these textures and these lights into video. So while we're back in After Effects, let's just have a quick look at combining it into video. I've got this JPEG here called Tabletop that I've brought in, and it's a picture of a table. And I'm just going to stretch that up and sort of use that as a background for my shapes. And let's see, maybe just drag it across a bit, maybe up to there, and that's kind of, you can see I've tried to match actually the perspective matches quite well there. If it didn't match, then I would go back into my shape, change the angle so that the angle did match the background image better. You can see that the grid lines are still here in this image, and if I want to render it, then I'll need to get rid of those. So if I go to the effects control, you can see that the renderer at present is the software. If we put it on the final render, then those lines will disappear. And so if we were to do a render test, add to the render queue, comp move 1, and render, then that's going to take a little while, but that will render the image, render a video with the 3D and the photographic images combined. So after some time, we've finally got this render, and it looks quite nice. Obviously, to make that look realistic, we'd probably try and match the movement a bit better to the surface, and maybe try and match the lighting and match the shadows so that it works better with the image. But you get the basics of how we use Cinema 4D to combine 3D objects into After Effects. In the next tutorial, we'll go into looking at 3D logos, and we'll look at moving the camera around as well.